Everybody asks if Brad Holmes will change his approach now that the Lions lost in the second round of the playoffs. The answer is no.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey now, what's happening, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is a Thursday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thursday, January 30th into Friday, January 31st. We're approaching February. Thanks for making us your first listen and checking us out, everybody, wherever you get your podcasts. Appreciate all of you. As it is Matt Derry, Locked On Lions. You know me. We've been doing this show since 2016. We're here 5 days a week. We're talking Lions. Got a lot to discuss today on the podcast. I made the mistake of saying the other day that our everydayers, who I love to shout out and say hello to and appreciate, are hitting me up on LinkedIn, because now my LinkedIn is completely blowing up with everydayers. And I appreciate all of you. Brian Sheehy hit me up today. Thank you. My guy, Heiden Evans, was wondering if you could shout out my cousin and I, Kelton Evans. We're everydayers who grew up in Chatham, Ontario, and are now living out west in Vancouver, British Columbia. The Evans boys. And a shout out to Rachel Pritchard, Flagstar Bank superstar in Birmingham. Saw her today at the Southeast Michigan Chamber free-for-all. And she's like, why don't I ever get a shout out? You know, I love the show. So shout out, we gave a shout out to Flagstar over the weekend. All the crew there, Chris, and we love Kristen Shaoni. She doesn't know anything about the Lions, but we can shout her out. But Rachel Pritchard does, and she is an everydayer. We appreciate her. Locked On Lions today brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app, use the code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. A lot to get into today. I want to talk about Brad Holmes and his approach to this offseason, which I think should not change at all. One of the Lions assistant coaches, another one, gone. Free agency, who the Lions should be keeping, who the Lions should be looking at in outside free agents. PFF gave their top 10 NFL free agents. I think 2 of the 10 could be realistic options for the Lions. And we have a call of the day. If you want to be our call of the day, hit us up on SpeakPipe at speakpipe.com/Derry, DERY podcast page. It's been a little bit light lately on the calls of the day. I had to go back into last week's batch and pluck one from there. So please do that today and get involved. The call of the day. Tomorrow, Brett Whitefield, fantasy points. Love B-dubs. Brett Whitefield, live and direct from his house, but he's coming home right now from the Senior Bowl. He was down in Mobile. The game, of course, will take place on Saturday. The practices are over. Brett was down there, got a chance to see a lot of the players. The college players will ask him what he liked, what he didn't like, etc. Tomorrow on the program. So Brad Holmes entering year 5 as general manager. Can you believe that? 5 years of the Holmes regime. He's done a great job. Lions finished with 15 wins, and the best record in the NFL, and of course lost though in the divisional round of the Commanders. You guys all know that. And just because they lose, and just because there's been so much turnover with the coaching staff, Ben Johnson gone, Aaron Glenn gone, blah blah blah. People think that just because the Lions didn't achieve their goal this year, right? The goal was to get to the next step, which was the Super Bowl. The team has said, we want to win championships. It's not about just making the playoffs. It's not about just winning the NFC North, which, by the way, the Lions have now done twice in a row. It's getting to the Super Bowl and winning it. They want to bring a championship to this town. Could you even imagine what a parade and a party would be like in downtown Detroit? And downtown it's on the come, man. There's great things happening in downtown Detroit. And man, would it be great to top it off with a Lions Super Bowl championship. That is for sure. Everything's great in downtown. Just ask Grace Caros. She seems real happy. Anyway, I shouldn't have done that. You guys know. So where was I? So anyway, people were asking about Brad Holmes. Like, what's Brad Holmes going to do? I have people come up to me all the time. What do you think about Holmes? What's he going to do? Big splash in free agency, trading for Max Crosby. What's going on there? Brad Holmes should, period, not, period, change, period, a, period, thing, period. He should not change a thing. The Lions' approach over the last few years has been what? Draft well, develop young talent, keep talent here. I get it. Max Crosby puts it out there on social media. He's on every podcast. He's on every show. He's talking about the Lions. He's from here. He played at Eastern. I don't see that happening. I don't see Brad Holmes, and we talked about this yesterday with Colton Pouncey from The Athletic. Go back and watch the show or listen to it if you missed it. I don't see the Lions doing something like that where they're going to take a couple of first-round picks or a first and a second or whatever it is and mortgage the future for Max Crosby. Would putting Max Crosby opposite of Aiden Hutchinson on the other end, on the other edge spot, be a good thing? Of course it would. Of course it would. But that's never been Brad Holmes' approach. Free agency has never been about day one hitting home runs. Brad has hit some singles. He's hit some doubles, and it's working. So you're drafting and developing. You've got some young guys that Brad Holmes has drafted. I'll use Broderick Martin as an example. All right. Many people saying the Lions need to go out and sign Deron Payne. They need to go out and sign all these free agent defensive tackles. And they might. Okay. They did last year with DJ Reader. But what if a guy like Broderick Martin, whom Holmes drafted a couple years ago in the third round, finally pans out, finally gets his chance, finally gets in shape, isn't injured, and they develop him. And he works with Casey Rogers, the new D-line coach, and becomes something. I still think the draft, develop, sign your own philosophy is going to stick and stay. Stick and stay, Mark. Stick and stay with what the Lions are doing and what Brad Holmes is doing. And here's the other thing. Chris Spielman did not get the Jets GM job. Some Darren Gougie, I don't even know the guy's name. Some other guy got it. Chris Spielman's still going to be here, and Chris Spielman has a lot of influence. And that's somebody Brad Holmes can talk to say, hey, listen, what we're doing is working. We just won 15 games. So drafting guys that are Lions, filling needs. Maybe it's a couple of one-year deals in free agency. Maybe it's a 2 or 3 year deal in free agency. And I'm going to talk about some players I think could be realistic for the Lions and bringing back some of your own guys. Someone said Kevin Zeitler to the Bears. Why would Kevin Zeitler, who's 35 years old, leave the Lions to go to Chicago unless it's just all about money? But the Lions are closer to what Zeitler wants, which is to exit stage left with a Super Bowl ring. He's not going to play till he's 40, I don't think. Right? You want to keep a guy like Kevin Zeitler around. So I don't think Brad Holmes' philosophy should change at all. I don't think just because the Lions lost in the second round to the Washington Commanders, kind of got their asses kicked, kind of didn't play well, that all of a sudden you're scrapping everything. And just because Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are gone doesn't mean, oh, the sky's falling. Remember the 2024 Eagles after the 2023 Eagles lost both their coordinators? Oh, it was a bleep show. Yeah, it was. But what did the Eagles do the next year? They added to their defense for 2 years, 23 draft, 24 draft. Those guys started to get better. And this year's draft for Philly on defense with guys like Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, the guys from a few years ago, Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, those guys all got better. And yeah, the Eagles got rid of Matt Patricia, who's an unmitigated disaster and train wreck. I mean, you want to talk about buffoonery, that he's the bistro. He's the chef at the buffoonery bistro, Matt Patricia. He makes some mistakes. Hopefully John Morton, who's officially now the Lions offensive coordinator, isn't a mistake. Hopefully elevating Kelvin Shepard is not a mistake. We're going to find out. But I think the Lions have enough talent that Brad Holmes needs to stay with the plan. There's no need to panic. Not at all. All right. Coming up next on Locked On Lions, what shall we do? Oh, first things first, I've got to tell you about TurboTax. But coming up next, I want to talk about some free agents the Lions need to be keeping around. Also, some free agents that the Lions might be looking at as well. Steve Heiden, the Lions tight ends coach, is gone. We'll talk about that also. Coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. Brett Whitefield tomorrow. Hey, tax season is here. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now taxes is matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find you every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All you got to do is get the most money back guaranteed. So you can get your money back guaranteed, I should say. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. Back on Locked On Lions, Matt Derry with you on a Thursday. I want to say one other thing before we dive into free agency here. George Blaha, okay, who's one of my mentors, a guy that I have an immense amount of respect for. I worked with for many years, both on Michigan State football broadcasts when I did the hosting there and the Pistons radio broadcasts. George is a god. He's a legend. How is that man not in the NBA or the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame? They put broadcasters in there. Joe Tate's in there, who is my childhood idol from Cleveland, a longtime voice of the Cavs. George Blah has got to be in the Hall of Fame. Last night on the Pistons-Pacer game, he was eviscerating Tyrese Halliburton, just going off on him. He talks too much. He thinks he's a referee. It was just classic George. Classic George. And Pistons-Pacers has become a rivalry again. Part 2. Part 1 was Rick Carlisle versus Larry Brown. Part 2 is Rick Carlisle versus JB Bickerstaff. It's awesome. It was fun to watch last night, although the Pistons lost. But Blaha was on his A game, man. That dude is the best. Saw George a couple of months ago. I love that man. Love that man. Put him in the Hall of Fame tomorrow. All right, free agency for the Lions. Now, everybody, the Pride of Detroit guys, the Lions Wire, Justin Rogers, Freight News, everybody's doing their who the Lions should bring back routine. And they're making lists in terms of what players the Lions should bring back. First and foremost, I've said this on the show, and I will continue to say it. The Lions are not going to be able to keep everybody. And I don't think they're going to be able to keep Levi Onwuzurike. Onwuzurike had really good PFF numbers this year in terms of quarterback pressures. He played the most games he's played in any season this year. Very, very good season for Levi, and I think he's going to leave. Because when you have DJ Reader, unless the Lions let Reader walk and cut him, I don't see the Lions bringing Onwuzurike back. I could be wrong. The two guys I think the Lions have got to bring back ASAP are Carlton Davis, who was the Lions' best cornerback this year, played very well, was on a one-year deal. He's a veteran, physical, had a really good season. And you've got to have secondary depth if you're playing in this division with these quarterbacks and everything else. Carlton Davis is number one. Number two, I said it before, is Kevin Zeitler. 87.2 run blocking grade from PFF this year for the 35-year-old right guard. Who's better than Kevin Zeitler? Who's got it better than us? Who's better than Kevin Zeitler at right guard for the Lions? The answer is nobody. Kevin Zeitler has got to come back. You want to move Mahogany to left guard, maybe bench Glasgow or pay cut or anything like that. To me, the Lions' best offensive line for next year would be Decker, Mahogany, Ragnow, Zeitler, and Sewell. You want to win. You want to show that this new offensive coordinator knows what he's doing. You don't want to miss a beat with Ben Johnson. It starts up front. You cannot afford to lose Zeitler. If he wants to come back, pay the man. He was on a very economical 1 year, $6.5 million deal this year. Those are the two guys that have to come back. I would put Tim Patrick high on my list too. I know Derek Barnes is important, great for the locker room. Tim Patrick, to me, was awesome this year in being a third receiver, but being a heck of a blocker in the run game. And he earned his stripes this year, and that's a guy that I think you got to bring back. Ife Melifanu, I could see him going elsewhere. Jets, Colts, I've mentioned before, are desperate for a safety. He's always been injured. Good football player, but you got Branch and you've got Joseph. If he's going to want to go somewhere and be a starter. Marcus Davenport, who knows? Only played 2 games this year, then was lost for the season due to injury yet again. Would you bring him back? Al-Qadim Muhammad had some good moments. And if you can get him on an economical deal, that would be a player that I liked a lot that I would bring back. People are saying Kendall Vildor's got to come back. Why? Cornerback depth is important, but I think the Lions could do better. Now, Pro Football Focus has their top 10 NFL free agents this offseason. I'm just going to read them real fast. T. Higgins, Trey Smith, the guard for the Chiefs, Javon Holland, safety Miami, Chris Godwin, receiver for the Bucks, Khalil Mack from the Chargers, DJ Reed from the Jets, cornerback, Amari Cooper, wide receiver from the Buffalo Bills. That's the number 7 free agent, Amari Cooper. Ronnie Stanley, the big tackle from Baltimore. Sam Darnold, number 9, quarterback Minnesota. Josh Sweat, edge rusher from the Philadelphia Eagles. Yes, I said Philadelphia. What about Philadelphia? Shake it up. See, now I'm going to hurt my throat. Love you, Scott Farrell. The 2 guys on this list that I could see the Lions kicking the tires on are Khalil Mack, who's ranked 5th, and Josh Sweat from the Eagles, another edge rusher, who is 28 years old. Khalil Mack is 34. I could see the Lions making a run at both of those guys. Now, Pro Football Focus projects that Khalil Mack, who still has to decide if he wants to play, by the way. He's been in this league a long time with the Bears, Chargers. Khalil Mack, according to PFF, would probably assign a 2-year, $45 million contract. $22.5 million average a year. So really 45, 2 years, $45 million. It's about $22.5 million a year. I love Khalil Mack, and I think he'd be great. Josh Sweat would be closing in on a 3-year deal at around $18 million a year. So 3 years, $54 million for Josh Sweat of the Eagles. 8 sacks this season. 75.7 PFF grade. What was Khalil Mack's PFF grade this year? 90.2. God bless it. That's really good. Man. Pretty impressive. So anyway, that is Khalil Mack has had 2 back-to-back years of grade over 90 with the Chargers. Fantastic. That's impressive. Need to see something here on Josh Sweat. Yeah, 75.7 overall grade. I believe the Khalil Mack grade, let me find this again. Pass rush grade was 86.3 for Mack this year. It says season grade 90.2, 5th among edge rushers. So I could see a scenario where a short-term deal for Khalil Mack, similar to what DJ Reader did last year, he got a 2-year deal, would be something in the cards for the Lions that I could see. But I don't see the Lions breaking the bank for Reader got 13.5 a year. Mack, they're projecting around 22.5 million a year is a lot of money. A lot of money. Not something Brad Holmes normally does. But 2 of the top 10 right there, just a taste. Josh Sweat, good edge rusher. Khalil Mack, obviously one of the best to ever rush the passer in the NFL. Real fast here, Lions are looking for their fourth tight ends coach in the last 5 years. That is because Steve Heiden, who did a nice job as a tight ends coach for the Lions the last couple of seasons, is leaving and is going to join the New York Jets and Aaron Glenn's staff as their offensive line coach. Heiden, of course, is a former player, a former tight end in the NFL, worked very well with this group led by Sam Laporta, but getting an opportunity to coach the O-line with the Jets, and I'm sure getting a bump in pay. He's leaving to go to New York. So the plucking of Lions assistants from Ben Johnson to Aaron Glenn is continuing. So bye-bye to Steve Heiden. All right, coming up next, let's do a call of the day. You want to be our call of the day, you can do so at our voicemail system, which is SpeakPipe, SpeakPipe, speakpipe.com/dairy podcast page. More coming up next right here on Locked On Lions. And attending NFL playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. We knew about this when the Lions played the Commanders. You knew that crowd would be loud. You knew the tickets would be crazy expensive. But listen, it was worth it for some of you that had never been to a Lions game or just want to be at a playoff game. And the great thing is you got the Gametime app. What does that mean? Well, Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I'll be heading down to Bloomington, Indiana next weekend to see IU in Michigan. I know where I'm getting my tickets. I get them right there on Gametime, and I can get them right before the game. I can get them an hour before the game when the prices come down, and I can select my seat, see my seat, all right there. All right. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee give me peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, time now to do our call of the day. Caston, one of our regulars on the call of the day, hit us up on our SpeakPipe voicemail system. We've got to find a sponsor for call of the day. We got to do that. I got to work with our sales team here and get this figured out. But call of the day, Caston calling from out of state. Let's hear what he has to say and then react right here on Locked On Lions.
Hey, Matt. Castor Reed in Point, Ohio. Calling again. Ben Johnson, be honest, I'm kind of happy to see him go. If we're being honest with each other, the last two playoff games he's called, it's been the reason we lost. We could have ran the ball against San Francisco. We could have ran the ball against the Commanders. And I think Dan knows that. And there's some reports that there was some friction between the two. I don't know if I give any validity to that, but I could see a scenario in which Dan's upset that we're not running the ball when we're averaging 9 yards a carry. Second question is, are we overlooking the fact that Dan could be the next play caller in Detroit? Interested to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks.
All right, so there's Caston Reed calling in from an Ohio native and calling in with our call of the day. A couple of questions there, a couple of responses to Caston. Number one, I'm not ready to blame Ben Johnson for why the Lions lost to the Niners and the Commanders. Was it Ben's best day? No. All right. The reverse pass with Jamison Williams was an atrocity. It's a bad call from Ben Johnson. All right. It was terrible. Was the reverse for a touchdown when Teddy Bridgewater was out there and J-Mo ran it? That was a great call. Great call. The empty backfield on 3rd and 1 against that awful Commanders run defense, terrible. All right. The empty backfield on 4th down in San Francisco last year, bad. But I'm not going to sit here and go, that's just why they lost. The Lions in the second half of last year's NFC Championship game Could not stop the 49ers. Brock Purdy was running all over. Ball hits Vildor in the head. Pops right up in the air. So I'm not ready to say I'm glad to see Ben Johnson gone. Caston referenced some stupid report about, Ben Johnson and Dan Campbell have a rift. Ben Johnson was asked about that last week and goes, he's one of my best friends. I don't even know where that comes from. That's not true. Thirdly, John Morton was named the Lions offensive coordinator today. I've not seen any comments yet from Dan Campbell on what Morton's role is going to be. I do not think Dan Campbell's going to go back to be calling plays again. If you recall, when Campbell fired Anthony Lynn, or at least demoted him mid-season of year one of this regime, yes, Dan called the plays. For the remainder of the season. Then when Ben Johnson took over, Johnson has been the play caller for the last 3 years. I don't see a scenario where Campbell becomes the play caller. I just don't. I think they're going to give John Morton that opportunity. And I don't think he was leaving Denver as their pass game coordinator, even though he's from here and everything else, if he's not calling plays. But we'll have to wait and see on that. But I'm rooting against Ben Johnson. I hope he fails in Chicago. I can't stand the Bears. You wish him the best. Personally, he's a great guy. But I'm not ready to just blame him and say, I'm glad Ben Johnson's gone. We're going to be better off. You don't know that. This guy was arguably the best offensive coordinator in the game the last 2 years. And what happens when you win 15 games and everything else, is attrition. You lose staffers. All right. There's going to be good players that the Lions have free agent wise. We referenced them earlier. Levi and Iffy, they're going to go to other teams. They're going to get a lot of money because they performed well here. That's what happens when you win. All right. Brett Whitefield from Fantasy Points tomorrow. All things Senior Bowl with Brett Whitefield tomorrow right here on a Friday. Locked On Lions. Thanks, everybody. Take care.